It's so good to be back here. I think the first time I spoke here was 7 or 8 years ago. And wow, what a beautiful thing to see this community still thriving and growing and changing, and very much in alignment with our theme of creativity, of just constantly creating anew. How are you all doing today? Awesome, very good. That's a perfect religious science of mind answer, right? How many of you, the theme this month is creativity. How many of you are the creative types? How many of you are the creative types in here? We've got good students of the science of mind in here. I could fool some audiences with that question. Because so often, like I was the kid in grade school when we had art class. Like my art piece was never the one that was chosen. You know, when the teacher held a piece up and said, wow, look what Johnny or look what Mary did, mine was never that piece. There was never, look what Gregory did. And while I say that facetiously, that was a great disservice to me that the teacher did, and I have long since forgiven her. But we are all so creative, and in the science of mind teaching, what we teach is that if we are anything, we are creative. Like that is our nature. Like we are constantly creating anew. And what I really want to talk to, the topic today is called, from this book that is called Creative Confidence, Unleashing the Creative Potential Within Us All. And it's by Tom Kelly and David Kelly, who are brothers, who are very close to each other, and they actually work together. And their goal was to awaken people in all fields of endeavor to their creativity. To like have everyone be confident in their ability to create, and their ability to have an idea, and then that bring that idea to fruition. In their ability to see that they can make a change in their world. So this topic today, flip creative confidence, is about the flip is like a somersault. And there was this word that they came up with to represent that shift from one state of mind to another. And the state of mind they're talking about is a state of mind where we have confidence in our creativity, where we believe in our ability to create. And one of the things I really want to stress today, first, well, let me see if I can put this into a question, another trick question here. How many of you here know what you're capable of? How many of you know what you're capable of? Everyone's a little scared. Yes, of course. Everyone's scared to raise their hand on that one. Is it multiple choice or what are you getting at here? What I'm getting at, my answer to that question is we have no idea what we're capable of. We have no idea what we're capable of. And that's one of the things I want to emphasize today over and over again, that we have no idea what we're capable of. How do we find out what we're capable of? In my mind, the only way to find out what we're capable of is to venture out into the unknown and find out what we're capable of. Natalie knows that I'm a tennis player, and her husband is also a tennis player. And on the tennis court, I will often see someone not go for a shot. Like there'll be a shot way off to the corner, and someone won't go for it, and I'll be on their team, and I'll say, why didn't you go for that shot? And they'll say, I could have never gotten that. And I always say, well, how do you know? Like the only way for you to know that you couldn't have gotten that is if you went for it and then didn't get it. And maybe, because I've had this experience myself, there are times where I go for something that in my mind seems impossible. But I go for it anyway because it's my natural instinct. And somehow I get it. My opponent is shocked. I am shocked. But I get it. We have no idea what we're capable of. And the only way to find out is to venture out. Don't just stand there. Do something, huh? One of the things, and I'm having a great chance to practice this myself right now because I, about a year and a half ago, created this organization that Laura talked about in my bio, Seva, and I'm having a great opportunity to practice what I'm talking about here today because it's venturing out into the unknown. It's there's this idea, and I have days where I wake up where I go like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is just a pipe dream I have of this organization because there's many aspects of it that are unformed, that are still coming about. And then I'll hear people talking about Seva, and I'll recognize I have a board that is behind Seva, and they're coming up with new ideas, and there's new things that we're creating. And then I'll realize that there are courses that I'm teaching through Seva, and there are students who are taking those courses and inquiring about those courses. And there's a website, and none of that existed, of course, before Seva came about. And then I think about the name Seva. Seva came from science of mind. The first part, S-O-M, is science of mind. And seva is a Sanskrit word that means selfless service. And those two came together. However, like now, we just go like Seva. Oh, okay, that makes sense. But when I was coming up with the name of this organization, I could not I really wanted the perfect name, and I could not come up with it. I mean, I would say it took about 3 months to come up with the name Seva. And in my first process, it was a very left brain process. I was thinking like I knew what I wanted it to mean, so I was looking for words in Greek, in Latin, words in Sanskrit, words in French even, because I like the French language. I was trying to find a word that both sounded good, had a nice sound and a nice feel to it, and that also conveyed the meaning that I wanted it to convey. And no word that I could find, and I searched high and low, conveyed the meaning. And one day, it just popped out. Anyone ever have that happen? Something just pops out? You know, you're working your left brain, and then your left brain finally rests or resigns, like in exhaustion. And then it just pops out. And it just popped out. Because I suddenly was looking at science of mind, and I'm like, and I had all these words. I had all these words on there. So I had science of mind on there, and I had Seva on there, and I had all these words. And one day, those two words just popped into my mind and put them together, and it was a eureka moment. Because it sounded good, it looked good, it felt good, and it meant exactly what I wanted it to mean. Science of mind in action in the world in service. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. And this is how this creativity works, right? Like Seva now is a thing. And Seva now is an organization. But at one point, it was none of that. Until first there was an idea. I was sitting in a coffee shop one day. And in that coffee shop, I was pondering, after leaving the home office of Centers for Spiritual Living, what was next for me? And in pondering that, one day I was sitting in a coffee shop, and the hair stood on my arm, and I got goosebumps at what was coming through. And I knew, like, this is it. And so that was the beginning of this thing now that we call Seva. And at that time, it had no name. It just had some concepts, some ideas. But this is the way that we're constantly creating. We're constantly creating something. They quote Steve Jobs in this book because one of the authors actually worked very closely with Steve Jobs. And their company actually were responsible for the working with Apple and the design of the very first mouse for the very first Apple computer. I mean, they've been involved in some pretty cool innovations. And so they've really studied this thing called creativity, and they've really recognized like that we're all creative and we can step back for a moment. And it's like the left brain aspect of it and the right brain aspect of it. And their goal is to help people see, especially people like business people and engineers or people who are in analytic roles, for example, that don't necessarily think of themselves as creative, and to like awaken in them that they're highly creative. And so they've taken people in situations like where they'll say, redesign the experience of having coffee in the morning. And some people get really uncomfortable. Like what kind, like some of you did when I asked you the question earlier. Like don't ask right? Don't ask me these abstract questions. But the abstract questions engage the right side of the brain and engage our creative nature. And so they would ask them, like, redesign, like, you got a group of people here, and it'd say, redesign the experience of having coffee in the morning. And the people who like don't want to be doing like this creative process and aren't so sure they're creative and don't want to be in the process of this very quickly come up with very left brain analytic solutions. Like just add more creamer and we'll be done. Right? But those who recognize they're creative see it as an opportunity, right? And they start going into like, wow, redesigning the experience of coffee in the morning. Wow, we could do all kinds of things with that. Right? Javinus, there you go. So, in this book, they say at its core, creative confidence is about believing in your ability to create change in the world around you. It is the conviction that you can achieve what you set out to do. Belief in your creative capacity lies at the heart of innovation. A growth mindset is a passport to new adventures. Like, because to tap into our creativity, we have to be open, right? And we have to trust in the unknown right now, right? And we have to venture into the unknown. It's very funny, this iPad right here that I'm using right now. It's a very innovative product. But when Apple came out with this, and Steve Jobs was one of the visionaries behind this, I thought, who would ever want an iPad? Like, I've got my phone, I've got my computer. Like, who would ever want this thing that's somewhere in between, like the phone and the computer? I use this for everything now. I mean, all my the notes from my talks are on this. Every book I read practically is on here through the Kindle app. I use this to read news. Like it's very light, so I can just carry it around and like turn it on like my phone. But here's someone that had a vision that knew what the customer, me, wanted before I even knew what I wanted. Because they had a vision of what was possible for this. I'm back in my technology days. See, Laura mentioned that I started off in the computer industry, and I'm off and running on there. The idea of a PC. When they first came out with the idea of a PC, people were like, who would want a computer on their desk? Because at the time, computers were these huge things in a back room somewhere. So, except for the visionaries, most people said, that's like the craziest idea I've ever heard. Who's going to want a computer on their desk? Now we have them on our desk, on our lap, in our pocket, on our wrists. On our wrists. I haven't gone there yet. So it's kind of a permission. There's kind of a permission we give ourselves. A permission, like, do I have permission? Can I actually do that? Can I actually come up with an idea that, like, no one else even thinks is even, like, people think is ridiculous? Like, that's pretty bold, isn't it? Isn't that pretty bold? Like, to come up with an idea that everyone else goes, like, that's the craziest thing, and then you keep venturing forward? Like, you go, like, no, I think I got something here. Like, that's pretty bold. It's like we have to give ourselves permission to go with our ideas, to go with what we create. I don't know about you, but for me, I had this idea ingrained in me and that I accepted that if I created, how good could it really be? Like, good stuff comes from out there somewhere, right? Good stuff comes from out there. Good stuff, how does good stuff come from me? And then the idea that, like, wow, something good can come from me. Like, I wrote a book, and people said, how long did it take you to write the book? I said, 5 years. 1 year to write it, and 4 years to convince myself I could be an author. right? How can you give yourself permission to be creative and to keep bringing newness into your life and newness into the world and newness into experience? Like our successful spiritual communities, constantly innovating, constantly looking at how can we do this better? How can we create something better? How can we create a better experience? When I first got to Colorado, I had the opportunity to go to Mile High Church as one of their sort of invitations to their top givers and support, like a reception to support in support of their top financial contributors. And Roger Toole, the minister, he's been there for like 25 years, was giving a talk to this group. And you would have thought he had the smallest of communities the way he was talking, because he was talking about, oh yeah, we're going to grow and we're going to, and in my mind, it really caught me off guard, because I wasn't expecting someone who's leading the largest center for spiritual living in the world to be talking about, like, we're going to create something really great here, like not being satisfied with the status quo. Like and then it's like, of course, that's why they're so successful. Because they're in that mindset of constantly creating, constantly making new, constantly finding new ways. And that was Steve Jobs. That was the genius of Steve Jobs. He was constantly trying to find something new, trying to create something new. They had a story in the book about how he called the authors of this book who were working with him on the design of a product. And he called them in the middle of the night and asked them about a screw that's inside the computer, and should the plate be nickel or cadmium? I believe cadmium was the other choice. And they were like, Steve, it's inside the computer. No one's gonna, like, is this, like, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? But it was an example of how every detail of the product was important to him. And in the middle of the night, he's thinking about, should the plate on a screw that's inside the computer that most people will never see be nickel or cadmium? Because he wants his product to be the best it could possibly be. Like, can we make a better mousetrap? Like, that's where we can get in our inertia, right? We've been doing things for a long time this way. We've always been doing it this way, right? There's that story that many of us have probably heard about the family that has the pot roast, and they put it in a pot, and they always cut the end off of it first before putting it in the pot. And like 3 generations do this, and finally the little grandchild says, Mommy, why do we cut the end off of that before we put it in the pot? And the mother says, I don't know, go ask your grandmother. We've always done it that way. And she goes and asks the grandmother, and the grandmother says, the reason we did it that way is because in the days when I was growing up, we only had one pot, and it was very small, and it wouldn't fit in there. So we cut the end off. Well, now we have a large enough pot, but we're still cutting the end off because we've always done it that way. But our creative nature calls us to constantly be looking at how can we contribute something greater to life. I look at the company Uber, and I think, there's been controversy, and whatever you think about them is fine, but like the audacity to think you could recreate something like the taxi industry, that you could recreate something that's been around that long. And so they're in Paris. The 2 guys are in Paris, and they can't get a cab late at night. It's snowing, and they can't get a cab. And they're like, this is ridiculous. So they come up with this idea, like, you should be able to get a cab at the push of a button. how bold is that? You should be able to get a cab just by pushing a button right now, and the cab should show up. And then they go about and create it. And they weren't stopped by the idea that, like, there's all these regulations that would stop them from doing it. They're like, no, I have a vision. I have something that is meant to be born through me. Something is meant to be born through us constantly, all the time. Are we giving that gift that wants to be born through us, moment by moment by moment? Wherever we are in life, if we are anything, we are creative. It doesn't matter what age we are, it doesn't matter what station in life we're in, We're constantly creating because creativity is constantly moving through us. Are we answering that? In my tennis, one day I was playing and I was doing these drills, and in these drills you get partnered up with different people. And so I was playing with this woman, and she was probably, I would say she was in her 70s, right? So there's a shot, and she doesn't really go for it, and I'm like, hey, like, because on the tennis court I'm like kind of competitive, so I'm like there's no excuses, like, and I'm like, hey, why didn't you go for that? And she turned to me, she said, I have 2 knee replacements. And I said, I paused for a second, I got to have an answer for this. And I said, well, you have the newest knees here. And I kid you not, this is a true story, I kid you not. The next ball that was hit, do you know what a lob is? A lob is like you're standing at the front by the net and someone says, oh, I got the perfect shot for you. You're at the front of the net. I'm going to hit it like a looping ball over your head way to the back court, right? So here's this looping lob to the back court. She's at the front. I kid you not, this lady turned around and hustled back there and hit it back for a winner. And I turned to her and I said, see, you have the newest knees in here. We're constantly being called to look anew, to create anew, and to value that which is coming through us, that which wants to be born through us. It's so easy to discount the things that come through us. It's so easy to wait for someone else in the world to solve the problems that we see, right? Like, I'm just little old me sitting here, we'll go have a coffee with someone, right? And we'll solve all the problems, right? we'll solve all the problems. But what if we're really part of that solution of big stuff? I think we really are. I think we totally are. I think sometimes we were waiting for someone else to solve the problems that are really ours to solve. We used to have a saying in some communities where we'd say, if you see it, then it's yours to fix. If you recognize it, then it's yours to fix. So I want to close here. So I want to use a quote from the book about this idea that we don't know what we're capable of. And it says that a person's true potential is unknown and unknowable, that it's impossible to foresee what can be accomplished with years of passion, toil, and training. I know that's my reminder today. I don't know if it's your reminder today, but that's my reminder for me today. As I look at Psalm Save Us sometimes and think, what am I thinking? What am I doing? Can I really have this bold vision and bring it to reality at this point in my life? How many of you think I can? I better do it then.
We don't just think, we know.
Thank you. Thank you. You all are knowing that with me. Do you realize that I just tricked you guys again? I just got all of you to affirm my success. Not really. I didn't really plan that, but hey, it worked. So I asked the question, what is possible for you? And I venture to say the question is unanswerable, that only through applying ourselves can we find out what is possible, and when life lobs something way over our head, may we turn and begin running to see what is possible for us. Thank you. Namaste. So I want to turn within for prayer for a moment. Now I want to return the favor. You guys prayed for me and affirmed for me. So I just invite you inward right now. To know with me that there is only one power, one presence, one life, one infinite intelligence that is moving through and as all that is. That very life is the life of my life. That very infinite creativity, the same power, creativity, intelligence that created the entire universe is that which moves in me, is that which moves in each person here. That each one of us are divine centers of that infinite consciousness, that infinite intelligence, that infinite power, unlimited in our possibility, unlimited in our potential. And so it is in this awareness that I speak my word right now and declare and know for each one of us that those creative ideas, those creative impulses that are continuously moving through us and as us, that this day we recognize those and we honor those and we lift those up if we so choose. And so I stand with every person this morning who says yes to that divine impulse within them, who says yes to that which is moving in them, who says, yes, I will be the solution, I will be the answer, who says yes to that creative intelligence, power, wisdom, and love that is moving through constantly, wanting to bring something through into form. I stand with each one knowing that the full power, presence, intelligence, infiniteness of life is behind and within us, and all is possible right where we are. And so I know right now that whatever it is we're experiencing in life, whether we're at the highest point, the lowest point, or somewhere in between, that power and presence of the infinite is right where we are, right as we are, and something good is wanting to happen and is happening right now, right where we are, through us, as us, and all around us. For this I am so grateful. And so I release this word to that immutable law that only knows to say yes. And therefore I know it is done as I have declared, and I let it be, and I invite each one here to join with me in grounding and accepting that with the words, and so it is. Amen.